Hi, Maverick. This is Gary Keller. How are you?
Hello, Gary. How are you?
I'm very good. Thanks for giving your time to visit with me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for giving your time. I'm sure it's much more valuable.
No, I don't know about that. Hey, listen, let's dive right into this conversation. You're in the auction business.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about that. Tell me exactly what you do.
All right. Well, I sold real estate both traditionally and at auction in about 70 countries around the world. I worked for a company out of London where we sold resorts, and we introduced this auction concept with luxury resorts, and sold that company and then came back to America. And the last 10 years, we've done nothing but selling luxury properties at auction. It's a very niche market. It's not for every property, but for properties that fit into our criteria, it's excellent to be able to sell the property in a 60-day window and for the highest market price available, and to drive a tremendous amount of people through the property, which I think has been a big key to our success.
Now, walk me through that. So you're located where?
Our corporate offices are in Scottsdale, Arizona. We joined Keller Williams coming up to about a year ago, and Mike Mendoza is our sponsor. We have 6 other offices through the Keller Williams network from New York City to San Diego, and we've got to put the brakes on it for right now just to be able to manage the people that are already involved in our company.
Okay, let's back up for just a second. You say we. So you actually operate under a business, correct?
Correct. Our company's name is Supreme Auctions.
Okay.
We're part of...
say we again. Who's we?
We, meaning our company, is part of the Keller Williams network, Keller Williams Sonoran Living in Scottsdale.
Now, who owns the we? Is it just you?
It is myself and my wife, yes.
Okay. No, I just want to understand. So when we say we, you're talking about the company, but the company is owned by basically your family.
Correct.
Okay. I just want to understand that. Okay. So, and I love that, by the way. I mean, that's exactly how you should do it.
Thank you.
So your business is called Supreme Auctions.
Correct.
You are a licensed real estate agent.
Correct.
Okay. And you were telling me you were licensed where?
Keller Williams Sonoran Living, Barry Kramer's office in Scottsdale, part of the Keller Williams network.
Okay. So what you've done is you made the decision, it sounds like, to expand beyond just you doing auctions. Is that right?
Correct. We wanted to expand our business similar to what we did in London and be able to offer this concept through not only the Keller Williams offices, but also through other brokerages that we have worked with over the years.
I love that. So let's break this conversation quickly into 2 parts. One, let's just talk about the auction business itself, and then let's come back around to this conversation of expanding it, okay?
Okay.
Okay. So let's talk about first Supreme Auctions business model. Tell me how that operates.
Okay, we sell nothing but luxury properties. That's our main business. We've done resort properties, but one of unique luxury properties, I'm up in Vail right now selling a property, and our next one is a 14,000 square foot Echo home in Log Home in Winter Park, Colorado.
Okay.
So there's a criteria that works for our particular concept. One, you have to have equity in your home for a seller. You have to be a motivated seller to sell it what the market value of the property is. And we give them a range with our agents in different areas. If it's Barbara Van Poel is part of our program out of Dallas. So if she brought me a property, I would ask her give me a conservative range on what we think the market value of the property is. If the seller is not within that range, we simply pass on them. And we pass on about 50% of the people that come to us, mostly due to unrealistic price expectations. The ones we do decide to sell and take on a market, we sell. We've only not sold 2 properties in a decade, so we're pretty good at choosing sellers that are in a position both financially and mentally to sell at what the real market value of the property is.
Okay, so if I called you tomorrow and said I want to sell my home by auction, walk me through that.
Okay. So first off, I would find out a little bit about your property, where it's located. I would then, before that, even send you links to actual auctions so you can view what an actual auction looks like, the amount of people that come through the property, and then we will go over how the program works. And it's a 45 to 60-day marketing program. We actually show the property 4 weekends prior to the auction, and we'll drive anywhere from 200 to 500 people through that property in those 4 weekends. Saturday and Sunday normally 12 to 4. So there's a tremendous amount of activity because the message that we're marketing out to, and I've got a master's degree in marketing, is very different than traditional real estate. We're selling the sense of urgency for the buyers to take action and to be able to buy at their price. The byproduct of that is selling the property. So we get them involved in the actual auction itself. For the seller, how it works for them is the benefit is that they don't have high carrying costs. They know that in a 60 to 90-day window, depending on what our schedule is, the property is going to be sold, and it's going to be sold for the highest market price. There's two types of auctions. A reserve auction where the seller sets a reserve on the property. If the auction doesn't meet the reserve, then they opt not to sell. That's probably the weakest way to sell in today's market. Many buyers are not showing up to those auctions because they don't believe that the property will be sold, and they don't believe the seller is actually motivated to sell at what the real market value of the property is. The majority of our auctions, and what's going on here in the next 2 or 3 auctions that are coming up in the fall, are absolute auctions where the property is sold to the highest bidder, regardless of price. And in the beginning part, they mentioned that to a seller. The concern is, oh my gosh, my home could go for $1. The reality of it is that you'll get a lot more activity for your property, and you will sell it for a much higher price than a reserve auction. There's a reason why much of Christie's and Sotheby's art are sold with no reserve. All of Barrett Jackson's cars are sold at no reserve because it drives buyers to take action. It gets them in the game. And that's really what we're selling to the buyers, is to be able to buy at their price. The safety valve for the seller is, and the concern is, what happens on auction day if there's 3 people there and I'm selling my $3 million home and there's 3 $1 million buyers. They have an option. It hasn't happened, but it's not impossible, but it's improbable. But if it does happen, then the seller has an option to be able to cancel the auction anytime before the auctioneer opens the bidding. So as long as the auctioneer does not open the bidding, they opt not to sell. And our program is very detailed. Certainly too much to talk about in this particular conversation, but we have a very good idea, and we give the seller a very good idea of what these buyers are saying, because when we show them through the property, everybody goes on a private tour, and our job for the seller is really not to show how beautiful the property is. It's to show them and to let them know who these people are, and we do that through qualifying questions, and at the end, that is all logged into a database, and toward the end of the marketing period, about 4 days prior to the auction, we sit down with the seller. We go over all the information on what happened in the showings, all the marketing plan with them. So we want them to know everything that we know. It's very transparent. So go ahead.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. Because I'm sure a lot of people immediately want to know who is what you would consider to be a good profile for someone who needs to sell a property or should consider selling a property by auction.
Okay. One is non-distressed sellers. We don't do any bank-owned properties. Most of our sellers own nothing on our properties. At least 50% equity is kind of a benchmark. Agents always want to know is able to and willing to pay the upfront marketing fee for the property. The seller is responsible, unlike traditional real estate, for the hard cost to actually market the property. And in our program, that's not a profit center. It's what we give a detailed marketing plan on whether we're doing a national or global campaign, and they're responsible for that payment up front. There's also a no sale fee if they decide not to sell the property, which is within their right. There's a cancellation fee that's also in there that goes to paying our showing staff and our marketing staff. It doesn't really put much money in the coffers, and I haven't taken one in 9.5 years, and I don't think I will in the future, but that's credited back to them at close of escrow. So what that does is it, both of those two, the marketing fee and the no sale fee, it vests the seller in the sale of the property. So you know that the seller is motivated when they're going to write you a check to be able to sell their property. So that's a motivated seller is my first question is always, why do you want to sell? And if they bought their home at the height of the market and they want to triple their money, it's probably not our guy. But for the ones that are realistic, they're looking around and they're finding alternative ways to sell their property, especially one, when they've been on the market for such a long time, or two, they realize that, as in the next property coming up in Winter Park that's never been on the market, that it's going to take them 2 or 3 years to probably sell their property, and lowering it is not working real well. And there's been...
Okay, back off. So why, is it an albatross? What is it that when you say that, you say with confidence that it would take that long? What's the issue with the property?
It's not so much an issue when you get into these multi-million-dollar properties. They just take a long time to sell, and that's the reality of what's going on. And in some cases, like the one we just looked at in Newport Beach, it's been on the market for 2.5 years. It's on the water. They still can't sell it. They can't get enough people through it because you need a bigger marketing engine to be able to do that, and a message so they're going to get the people engaged. And what this does is it focuses a spotlight on that particular property, and rather than a big pool of property that are just for sale. So sometimes they're very unique properties, and sometimes very unique locations. Other times the seller just doesn't want to wait the year that is taken to sell the property in today's market traditionally.
Gotcha. I don't know if you know this, but I used to own an auction company.
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm. The name of it was Homes by Auction.
Oh, okay.
And it was an internet-based property. And it was actually ultimately owned by eAgency.
Okay.
And we actually launched it live. And it worked. And at the same time, we discovered that Keller Williams Realty didn't need to be dealing directly with buyers and sellers. And so for us, we walked back out of that business. But my personal belief is that auction really would be for every property. Now, I know that sounds weird, and most people look up and say, "Oh, no," but I actually believe that you could flip a switch on MLS and just say, no, everything goes to auction. You know, we have a 30-day preview period, and then every property in MLS goes up to auction. And if it doesn't,
I like your thinking, Gary.
And if it doesn't sell at auction, then it just goes into regular MLS. But the reason I say that is because my view, and we did a mass amount of research and spent a lot of money developing this internet property. And what was interesting, and we were doing it for the Keller Williams agents, and the biggest reason we were doing it is we were afraid that auction was the one thing that could disintermediate the real estate agent. Our view was it was the only thing that could. And so we believed we better get in there and understand it. In the end, though we believe that conceptually it is the only thing that really could, practically it ended up it won't, because what we discovered is in the United States, at least in Canada, the traditional MLS approach is so ingrained and built into the industry and is locked down and bolted and tied down by incestuous relationships that
is true.
That moving to something that would actually benefit the buyer and seller isn't anything they're interested in.
Yes, and I don't believe that this will ever replace the traditional real estate, because some properties are, especially in the luxury market, some properties are better for traditional real estate. If you have a $2 million property and you go 1.8, we may not be your guy.
Yeah, well, so that's the way that's the way you're thinking, and given the way that the role or the positioning that auction has to take in our industry, I think that's correct. But the reality is that any property could be auctioned, and in the sense of, and again, if you imagine what I just said, that tomorrow morning in all of, let's say, Arizona, you flipped a switch. And all real estate, if the seller wants to sell tomorrow, the board says, great, no problem. We have a 30-day preview period where people can come see your home. It's open, every Friday from, 8 o'clock until 5 o'clock for 4 straight weeks. And it's previewed by realtors. It's previewed by everybody. And then we put it up for auction. And we have several different ways, but let's say you choose the minimum bid. So you put it up at market price. I mean, you put it up, let's say the property is worth $100,000. It goes on auction at $100,000. And the reason we do that is so that every buyer has a chance to buy that property. Current MLS doesn't allow for that. Current MLS is basically a secret game.
You're right.
Yeah. Now, you can effect an auction, and some really smart agents do it, by simply putting signs up that says, and marketing to the real estate community saying, I got a listing, it's coming up in 30 days, here are the parameters, I'm giving everybody a fair shot to try to buy this. And in effect, trying to create an auction environment for the seller. But the reality is right now, I know as a purchaser, I get frustrated all the time with the fact that I go out to buy real estate and someone snagged a good one. I might have paid a little more. I might have paid a little more for that property, depending on what it was and what I would use it for. And I didn't get the chance to pay the seller more money because MLS really isn't designed to get the seller more money.
You're right. They're designed to, this is the number, and one thing that an auction does is it doesn't, as you mentioned, put a ceiling on what the sales price of the property is.
Well, that's exactly right. It does not put a ceiling. You can put a floor on it if you want, but it doesn't put a ceiling. And if you think about it for a second, the reality is sellers love auctioning. And it happens all the time in markets where there are low amounts of inventory. When we have low amounts of inventory and normal demand with affordable interest rates, sellers regularly get into an auction. And that's just, it's not called that, it's just called multiple bids.
Right.
It's just called multiple offers. Real estate listing agents love that. That's their dream scenario for their sellers is to get 2 or more buyers who want that property and are willing to up the price. And we're already seeing it right now in markets across the U.S. where, again, there's limited inventory, the economy's healthy, buyers have shown up to go ahead and get on with their life, if you will, and all of a sudden they realize they've just seen 3 houses and they've lost all 3 of them.
Yeah.
Now the 4th one, what do? They start upping the ante. By the way, remember, HUD understood this clearly back in the 80s, and that's how it got rid of all its inventory and what HUD discovered. So every Friday they had the HUD auctions in San Antonio. So anything that was foreclosed, you couldn't buy direct. You had to buy via sealed bid auction.
Right.
Well, why would HUD do that? And we know the answer. HUD's answer was because we make more money when we auction it.
Sure you do.
Yeah.
And RQC days also, yes.
Yeah, we make more money. We make more money by doing a sealed bid auction than we would by setting an MLS price.
Absolutely. So especially when you may not know what that is, what the price is.
And so, sure. So I'm just telling you that story just to let you understand it, anyone listening to you and I talk. My personal view is that auction is a great way to sell real estate. I have to be honest, I don't really believe in selling real estate. Right? Because if you buy a good one, why would you ever want to sell it? And
right.
The handful of ones that I have sold, I've regretted every one of them, even though some have been extremely profitable. I still regret it. So, but if I were to go to sell my property tomorrow, man, I would be very interested, understanding how real estate works, I'd be very interested in trying to invent or create or manipulate the scenario to actually get an auction to happen.
Well, it certainly would get the job done, and 50% of our properties sell prior to the auction for what you had just mentioned, that fear of loss for somebody that I may not be able to get that property at auction, or I may pay too much. They come forward, they make an offer, the seller accepts it, we cancel the auction. That happens in about half of our scenarios. So,
that happens
traditionally.
Well, that happens on eBay. That happens on eBay.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's called the Buy It Now button.
That's exactly it.
And the buyer looks at it and scratches their head and goes, I wonder. And some sellers are very crafty in terms of their opening price may be, $50, but the Buy It Now button is $65.
Yep.
Or whatever. And they're just trying to get a little more for the property. They've put it in an auction scenario. You can take it right off if you want for being willing to go ahead and pay 10 to 20% more than they were asking.
And it does motivate them to do so, because they may end up paying 30 or 40% more if they let it go and run through the auction process.
Mm-hmm. And or lose it altogether.
Correct. That is correct.
Yeah, isn't it interesting? And yet the real estate industry essentially is ignorant about auction.
There is a misconception about it. We've seen a big change in the last 2 to 3 years, just in real estate agents that are thinking outside the box, because the internet has kind of given all the information we used to have as agents and brokers to the buyers. Now they're looking for other alternative ways to be able to sell their properties, and that's one thing we've been impressed about with Keller Williams is the openness of them. One reason why we joined your company is because they were an education-based company, and our whole business is about educating the buyer, the seller, the real estate agent. And there's advantage in some of our scenarios. They make more money bringing a property to auction with our company than they would if they sold it traditionally with their commission splits and a traditional real estate model. So with Keller Williams, there are model. They can be their listing agent. They can also recommend not only other Keller Williams agents, but get a commission from outside Sotheby's, Remax, whatever the case may be, if they have relationships with them to be able to take their listings to auction. So it gives them a revenue stream that didn't exist before just with traditional real estate. And I think that's one thing the Keller Williams agents have embraced, because we were approached by pretty much all the big major brands. And when Mike approached me, Mike Mendoza, he asked me why we didn't go with those companies. And I said just the people and the culture, it just wasn't the right fit. And I wasn't sure whether we wanted to really expand and go, into a larger company, because we were very successful as a boutique company. And what Mike had mentioned to me, having been with a couple of other companies, is the people at Keller Williams are very different. And the culture is different. And after experiencing the first family reunion this past year in February and speaking as a breakout speaker at the reunion, I found him to be right on the nose. Everyone has been very supportive and helpful, and something they really didn't understand in the beginning, but now they're seeing the success of it and realizing that it's another arrow that they can put in their quiver, not for every property, but for the right ones, they can have an advantage over the other real estate companies, because they can offer something different than what they're offering.
Well, Maverick,
go ahead.
Before I let you go real quick, let's flip to the other conversation, and that is the conversation of expanding. Talk to me about what is going on with that, what your thinking is and what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay. We have managing directors right now in 6 different areas, 6 different offices throughout the Keller Williams network. We have out of New York City, and they're all managing directors that are building that market area, and they are the go-to person for auctions. Tuvia Sobolowski is out of New York City, Barbara Van Poel's in Dallas. We have one in Austin, San Diego, Seattle. Sam DeBello's out with her office there, and Scottsdale is our main office. And we also have an office in London that people that I've worked with over there for many years. We just finished 2 large sales this summer, one at 17.4 million pounds and one at 8.9. So, and they help market our properties in America internationally throughout their contacts. So what we're doing through the Keller Williams Network is we're setting up managing directors that have that particular area. We're giving that area to them. They're marketing that area to their sphere, to expired listings, to other Keller Williams agents in that area, and also other agents outside the Keller Williams Network, to be able to say, here's another option for your seller to be able to sell their property, whether it's been on the market for a long time and expired, or whether they're just coming to market, like our last 3 or 4 properties that haven't been on the market, for sellers that are motivated to sell and they don't want to necessarily wait a year or 2 or 3, then they can offer something different for them. And so far, we're still in the beginning stages of it, because obviously we just joined Keller Williams about a year ago, and the expansion really started after family reunion. But that's kind of what the thought pattern is of what we're doing. And right now we've got other people that are interested in different areas. The other one I forgot to mention is New Jersey, where we just finished selling a $3.4 million place, and with Adele DeMaro's group there, who owns a couple of KW offices. So they experienced the whole process with us, and that was one of the first groups with Keller Williams to actually do that since we've joined, and that was an enlightening experience for them. So that's really what we're doing as we're working with different people in different areas.
Okay, so let me ask you the question. And so what's the financial relationship between you and your directors?
They're responsible for selling the actual auction. They get if it's their listing, they get their listing fee, either 3 or 4% on their side of it. The buyer obviously is taken care of by that also. So the advantage to the listing agent is they can get paid in 60 days versus maybe waiting for a year or 2. So they still get their listing fee as part of that. If they're a referral, then there's a referral fee for somebody else's listing that comes on board. So, and some advantages to the Market Center, and Rob Agner, which I thought about this, but this was Rob's idea from the beginning, is to use this auction concept as a recruitment tool to recruit other luxury agents to be able to say, hey, here's something different than your company that you're with, again, with all the other tools of Keller Williams that we can offer you. With Adele's group, they are not really in the luxury field, but they want to get into that. So now this gives them a heads up on being able to offer something to these luxury brokers, or not only luxury brokers, but luxury sellers, to be able to start getting into that luxury market. And that's not only there, but in some of the other areas where Keller Williams, the new KW Luxury Homes International, is still fairly new. It's only 5 years old, so that's a big advantage for them also.
And people can find you or contact you via going to your website, right?
Correct. The website is supreme-auctions.com.
Perfect. All right.
And
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and that will give them all the information. They can see videos of past auctions, and there's a lot of information on there for agents, what works well for buyers and sellers. So that's the way we designed the site, and so far it's worked very well.
Well, I've enjoyed visiting with you, and look forward to a successful relationship, and good luck on your upcoming auction.
Thank you very much, Gary. I appreciate your time on the call today.